Hello, this is Lyle Leeds with Optimized Profitability Podcast. Today we're talking with Duncan Boyle. He's with Texas Independent Insurance, and he is an insurance agent specifically for real estate investors, so it's a little bit different there. We're going to kick off his story. First, he's a typical entrepreneur. He's married. He's got 4 kids, 2 dogs. But he's going to start off his story of how he came out of Africa and how that brought him into entrepreneurship. So, Duncan, take it away.
Well, thank you, Lyle. My story began, I was a missionary kid, so my parents worked with the church overseas in Tanzania, Africa. We went when I was 5. And so I always like basically to say how that impacted me from 2 things really came out of that. One, at a very young age, my dad had me working with him, mobile clinics, building churches and things of that nature. And so it started to incorporate some leadership attributes. And so whenever I've done anything, usually I've somehow been put in some type of leadership. So that was one. But secondly, being in Africa, and especially where we were when we'd have to go out in the villages and things of that nature, things are not set in stone. Things are always, you have to pivot with life, flat tires, getting stuck, whatever it may be, we just always had to overcome. So I think it started to instill in me at a very early age, just the entrepreneurial spirit, because it's not for the most part, it's not a one size fits all, or you do this. You just constantly have to, rethink life, or just, pivot your direction, or what are you doing, and constantly having to learn. And so I think that's what really started me, or creating the mindset of an entrepreneur early on. So,
right. Yeah. And what did it take from you to get from that, somebody telling you to be in leadership and you deciding to be in leadership? What'd that look like to you?
One, I took a test early on, and you know how you can sometimes take your strength tests, and leadership was always one of them. And my dad just kind of always had the mentality of a servant, and so that was just instilled into me first and foremost, and then opportunity. So I don't know if it was so much I decided to choose to go after that. It's just I always pursued it from an education perspective. I pursued business management with a emphasis on economics as well. And, educationally, when it came to being involved in a church, I was usually asked to be a leader with my company. I rose up pretty quickly. In my retail career, kind of prior to being an entrepreneur, I grew pretty rapidly into area management. So it was usually just something that kind of came. I don't know if it was something that I pursued, but I do enjoy it. So I don't know if it was so much that I made that choice. It was kind of both. I think sometimes you're wired for it and sometimes you're not. And I think that was my wiring. I really enjoy working with people, but my dad gave me a carving when I was young, or when I went off to college. And he's like, Duncan, you've always been a leader. And he gave me this carving, and it was, Christ kneeling down and washing the feet of his disciples. And it was a reminder to me. He's like, hey, if you want to be an effective leader, servant leadership is the way to go. I don't always lead that way, but it's my reminder of, hey, to lead well, you've got to serve well. So.
Right. And faith is a big portion of yours. And a lot of people, they hear that word servant leadership, which is an oxymoron in effect, because they go different ways. So explain what that means to you in your world as an entrepreneur.
Well, I think one of my core values, so as an entrepreneur, and even when I was just in retail, I set up some core values for me, and one of them was always service. And so what that means to me is, if you're going to lead well, or if you're going to serve people well, you've really got to start at that level and say, hey, what can I do to help you succeed? When I had employees, I would before, if we had somebody who was really struggling, I would always ask myself, have I given them every tool to succeed? And if I hadn't, then, termination was not on the table until I had given them everything they can to succeed. And then they proved that they weren't a fit. That's, at that point, we may make that decision. So that's just always been a mentality. So whatever it takes for me to help you be successful. And then I just took that in everything I did. Just how can we best serve you? Because if we do that correctly, if we serve you correctly, if we make you successful, then that will reciprocate back to me, hopefully. And so that's just always been a mentality that I strive for. I think it's constantly a battle, and one that, I think everybody has that mentality or has that in mind. To truly execute that is a constant battle, and continuing to get better and better. So.
Absolutely. And so you transitioned from retail into entrepreneurship, and leadership was part of that. Did you have any mindset shifting you did there?
Well, so I was in retail, corporate America, kind of, an environment, and was given an opportunity to start a whole new franchise in the e-com world. And my introduction into entrepreneurship was long story short here, one of the leaders of the company came in, and I remember it very vividly. It was the day before Memorial Weekend, and they said, "Hey, we're shutting down. The venture capital people have pulled all the money. We're shutting down. We're laying everybody off today." And they said, "Duncan, do you want to take over the business or one particular store? You have 24 hours to let us know." And so, man,
thrust into it.
I was thrust into it. So I went home and I said, I was talking to my wife and I was like, "Babe, let's pray long and hard, but I have 24 hours. And I was like, one, I wasn't expecting, it was completely unexpected, and I didn't have something lined up. And I was like, I know I can make it 6 months. There were 6 months left on the lease of that location. And I was like, I can make it 6 months. Let's give it a go. And she's like, all right, I back you. Let's do it. And so, yes, I was kind of thrown into it. That said, even in the retail, and when I went to that company, it was a new start. And so I loved a new start or challenges, anything where, if it was a struggling region, I loved going after that and helping them fix it. Or if it was a new business concept, I loved starting that. So again, that entrepreneurial spirit had already been there, but I was thrust into it. And then that business transitioned, that industry, the eBay drop-off store, online consignment model really changed when the camera and the phones got significantly better, right? And the camera quality. And so I was looking at expanding possibly. And when I was talking to a potential investor, we were just discussing, we're like, hey, what is the outlook of the industry, not me, but the industry look like? And we started to think through that, what is it going to look like in 5 to 10 years? And we really just came to the determination there was just a lot of risk involved based on the phone, and people were going away from utilizing other people to do their work for them to doing it themselves because, the eBay app is so easy to use. You've got the Facebook groups, all that. So anyway, I decided to shut that down. And, and so when I was analyzing, hey, what do I want to do? One, what was really important to me was the idea of residual income was huge. Secondly, the idea of serving small businesses or serving people at some capacity. And so it led me to insurance. And one of the reasons I love insurance, it's insurance. Let's be real. It's kind of boring. It's one of those necessary evils, I guess. But what I love about it is the aspect of being able to talk with people and really understand what their needs are, and then hopefully create a plan. It's probably one of the reasons why I really enjoy life insurance side of the business as well, is because it's a little more, you have to dive deep into deep into what their needs are. So anyway, yeah. And
so insurance itself is a highly sales focused organization. Is that correct? Would you say that?
Yeah, I would say so. Kind of eat what you kill, right? It has that mentality of you've got to go out there and get your business. So it is very sales oriented. Correct.
Okay. And how do you balance sales and service?
That's a good point. And, I think I'm constantly kind of learning that from a service perspective, a lot of it, I'm in an organization, and so we have a support team. So trying to have that team help support my clientele and my book of business, I guess you would say, is one. From a commercial side, I've continued to refine my process, but especially small businesses who are growing. I've now in my calendar, I reach out to them on a quarterly basis just to make sure. And that's something I've done recently. I used to touch base with them. I would call them if I had a need, or if they had a need, they would contact me. But now I'm being a little more proactive. I used to do 6 months, maybe even a year. Now I'm getting down to quarterly because their needs may change, their sales may change. And so I want to make sure that they're properly covered. So that's one of the aspects of it. Two, it's all relational. There are a million insurance guys out there. You have a lot of choices. Yeah. So what makes people want to utilize me? And what I have found is it's all relational based. And, my business has largely seen some growth recently just due to referral based business. And so, love that aspect of it. But, COVID hit, and that made some interesting transitions since we are so real estate investor focused. I mean, that's a large part of where we get our leads and who we serve. And when they shut down, and we've been shut down and you're not able to have the socials or the educational seminars, it was like, oh, now what am I going to do?
Exactly.
So that was an interesting transition for sure.
Yeah. And you talked about referrals. What are you doing to nurture the referrals? Like if someone's never created a referral system in their business, what would you suggest for them?
Well, one, you need to identify who are the people who can help give you the most leads, right? And so, for me, lenders are a big part of it, right? Because lenders are out there, they require insurance. And so that's my referral partners when it comes to lenders is huge. Also, just getting a good relationship with other investors, because people hang out with like-minded people. Right. And so that's been a big part. I know in COVID, right, as entrepreneurs, we really had to transition. I remember when COVID first hit, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And it was probably a week of a little bit of woe is me mentality. And then I was like, you know what, this is not going to help things. So I was like, or what can I do now? And so I really dove into social media and Facebook and identified, all right, there are a ton of real estate investor Facebook groups. So I just got on there, and then I had some investor friends and some other people that serve real estate investors. And we got on these groups and we just help. We tag one another, and because again, we know how each other serve our clients. And so anytime somebody's like, hey, I need a lender, or hey, are there hard money lenders that you trust, or hey, do you have a painter? I will tag those people that I know and trust. And that is really how it's been built lately. Because like I was telling you before, I probably had some of my best and most consistent months during COVID, and it all had to do with that. I think everything had to do with referral business, and then being really involved on social media, and then tagging other people and helping other people, and that gets reciprocated. So that's what I would encourage people to do.
Right. So in essence, you are using Facebook groups,
correct,
and using that to build relationships and leveraging the network of people you've surrounded yourself with.
Correct. That's
kind of a short version of a really cool strategy. And a lot of people are doing that.
If you think of it this way, right, we all have about 200 contacts, right, in our phone. So if I have a network of 200 contacts, well, they each have 200 contacts. I mean, pretty soon you're at 40,000 people that you have available if you have a really good referral partner. Exactly. Or just someone who does business with you and who will refer you. So that's kind of the mentality. I'm also a part of a networking group, and we went virtual. And so having that network, like you said, now I've got 40 people who all have people they know and are willing to, refer each other business. And we truly build the model. Our model of referrals is based on, hey, it's the law of reciprocity. And so if you give, eventually you're going to get. So having that mentality, again, kind of that servant mentality, let me give first, usually that'll pay it forward later. So
right.
And you pay it forward, not later.
Yeah, pay it forward. There we go. And you're an insurance person. Like I said, there's millions of people that do insurance, and that's their job. And some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are not. Yeah. You're an entrepreneur, which I love. That's a different concept. But what do you do? How do you differentiate yourself in the insurance world when you're talking with a real estate investor?
So, one, not all insurance people, like I'll kind of start here. Most people, when they start in real estate investing, a lot of times they're starting with the fix and flip, right? And so from an insurance perspective, not all insurance people do builder's risk policies. I'm just going to, draw out one specific product. And one of the reasons they don't do it is it can be a little bit labor intensive. One, two, the payout on it is pretty limited. So from just a kind of a selfish perspective, not a lot of people do that because it doesn't pay very well. Right. Our idea, so one, we do that, and there are a lot of agents that do it. But ultimately, our philosophy is if you serve them there, hopefully you can continue to do all of their business. Secondly, what makes us unique as an agency is we do have a rate shop guarantee. So for our standard home and auto clients, or even our real estate investors with their rental properties, we have a rate shop guarantee. And what that means is when any of our clients have an extraordinary increase, we will automatically shop that for them. We kind of get proactive. So that's one thing that we do.
Okay.
Secondly, we're really, for the people who are in the owner finance world and do sub twos and sub two wraps, we're very familiar with that. And so our knowledge in that is, we understand it well. One of our agents is a real estate investor himself. And so we have a network of people who are extremely knowledgeable in this real estate investor space. So.
Okay. And you and I, we talked a long time ago before all this hit about your concept of infinity banking. And we're not going to get to on this one. You and I are going to have a whole nother conversation. As a matter of fact, if you're listening to this podcasts, you'll go to our page. There'll be a link below this. It'll be a DFW top, or you can go to optimizeprofitability.com.
Yeah.
That'll take you directly to our blog post. And we'll talk a little bit more about the infinity banking. But I think one of the things that stood out to me on you and why I chose you as like an entrepreneur type person is because it's not just about, here, let me say an insurance policy. It's like, let's look at your whole finances and how we can line that up to work best with your life. That's where that service aspect came into play and everything. So what's something you've done to increase your profitability this year? What's one of the things that just stood out to you and said, oh, this was so easy. I should have done it years ago.
Well, so if you're talking about the infinite banking, and I'm glad you brought that up. So that is one thing that I, in particular, am a little bit unique on, and even in our office, is I love the life insurance space. And one of the reasons I like it, if it's properly structured, it can be a significant tool to use when it comes to planning for your retirement. Again, it can help supplement. From a real estate investor perspective, why I love it and why I think life has really started to be a significant part of my business is, one, the way we help educate real estate investors of a better way of creating passive income later on in life. And so we teach people how to optimize that. And like you said, we'll get into that and kind of dive into the nitty gritty of it. But that's one thing that I've done, is just continue to educate myself on how to properly or how to utilize life insurance as a tool versus simply just having it as a death benefit, which is significant. It is about leaving a legacy, but there are so many other areas. So that's been one thing. Again, I think something that's been good for me this year has really been COVID. COVID's been good for me in that it made me rethink how I do business. I was gaining, lead gen was primarily coming from real estate investor events. Well, they're not happening. So what do you do, right? So I had to really dive into the Facebook. So that just became another avenue. So when we hopefully get back to our new normal of being able to meet in person and having these things, right? Hopefully it's back to normal, not the new normal.
Exactly.
But now I have another avenue and another avenue of being able to serve clients, and especially the real estate investor. But so that's been significant for me.
Okay.
And then just the educational piece. I think anytime you educate yourself, it just opens up. It's kind of another aha moment. Oh, I hadn't thought about offering that, or look at the value of this product and what it can provide the client. And so, I think those two
hard question here,
things.
possibly a question for you. And a lot of people, they always ask these kind of questions. That's why I'm going to ask you, why did you choose to go to Facebook instead of doing something like LinkedIn, where there's a lot more professional real estate investors there?
Good point, or good question. I'm not 100% sure why I chose it. Probably comfort. And then secondly, one of my close real estate investor friends, they're a friend. They're more of a friend now than just a real estate investor client, but they are real estate investors, added me to a few groups. And so that's kind of where it launched. And then I just chose to optimize that space because I think people spend more time in Facebook. A lot of people are there. And so that's one reason why I chose that. The activity, all the questions, people are like, hey, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for this. So there's a lot of people on Facebook asking for help. And so, I think LinkedIn is another opportunity that I need to explore. I'm just, from a time management perspective, I'm choosing to go Facebook.
You got to choose one and stick with it. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so I think eventually I am going to dive into the LinkedIn as I continue to expand my commercial side of the commercial side of the insurance. Yeah. Because that's where you're getting more of the business owner, of larger corporations, things of that nature. So a lot of your real estate investors are, that a lot of them, they work, right? and then they're doing REI or real estate investing passively to eventually get to where they're doing it full time. And so, I think that's why we go the Facebook route. So,
Alrighty.
or why I go the Facebook route.
Good deal. If you had one tip to leave an entrepreneur today, when they listen to this broadcast, they're going to listen to 20 minutes worth of talking. What's one thing you want them to walk away with?
Oh, wow. I would say relationship is where it's at, just building those relationships. And then secondly, know you're going to struggle. I mean, it is a grind. And sometimes you just want to give up. I think we've all had those moments where you're like, what am I doing? Wouldn't it be easier just to go get a paycheck? Right. And those struggles aren't going to end for me. And I know they're not going to end for you, but just stick with it. And then having those relationships will help also, if you have the right ones, they're going to spur you on during those hard times. So I think it starts with the relationships because, one, you have a network at that point. Two, you have people to support you. So, yeah. Good point. That would be the one thing I would say.
Well, Duncan, I appreciate your time. And again, if you're listening on our podcast, I want to make sure and point you to our optimizedprofitability.com. Go there and you're going to hear a little bit more about what we're talking about, this infinity banking. So if you're a real estate investor, you definitely want to check out the second part of this. Go to that page. If you're just a normal person and you got enough out of this, I hope you take this information, build relationships, build your network, and find those places you're comfortable with. Get there, enjoy it, have a great time, and help other people. I love your service attitude. Thank you, Duncan, for being with us, and I look forward to talking to you more as we get off this stuff.
Thank you, Lyle. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.